Tom Hall on Take Your Best Shot podcast. Welcome aboard, Tom.
Thanks for having me,
Yeah,
Mike.
no problem. One of the reasons I want to invite you here is because we have a lot of views that are similar and a lot of views that are completely different.
hmm
And so I want to explore some of the ones that are similar and talk about some of the ones that are different and just try to
Sure.
see if we can get even ground or at least an understanding of each other. And we'll go from there, okay?
Sounds good.
All right. One of the first things about you that is very interesting to me is that you were homeschooled. Now, explain how that is for somebody who just has heard of it but doesn't really know what it is. Because I went to public schools and private schools and during my, I guess you'd call it K through 12 education.
Yeah.
So I don't know what homeschool is. Was it like your mom sat you guys down and just started teaching random classes, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. My mom taught a lot of English and history for me, and my dad covered the mathematics side of stuff. But it really was just sitting down and do your homework at the dinner table. I knew that my mom had made a rule that you can't hang out with your friends until your school's done, and so I could always just make sure I work ahead if I wanted a day off or any of that. But it really is like you get your Algebra 1 book and you flip open the first page and you work through it.
So both your mom and dad taught you. It wasn't like your mom's job, but both your parents.
My mom, I think, carried most of the weight of that. My dad did help out in different ways, but he had a job and my mom was stay at home, so she
Okay.
definitely carried.
So how about the other kids? It was just your family, or did other kids from that neighborhood come in, or how was that divided up?
Yeah, so my mom had her hands full. I'm one of 8, and so all of them were homeschooled. My oldest brother, I believe, did 1 or 2 years of kindergarten or something like that, but the rest were homeschooled. So she had her hands full, working with everyone, sitting them down. Most of us taught like responsibility of us doing it and having an ownership over it, which helped her kind of divvy it out, and not have to be so involved with us. But later on in high school, when we did approach some of the more difficult subjects, more advanced math or English or history, we did go to a co-op or something where a bunch of homeschoolers would get together once a week and they'd pay to do it, and so they'd have teachers come in and teach us different things that where maybe the expertise of the parents really couldn't teach to that.
But then did you have to take a test to show some kind of, that you had expertise or at least passing knowledge?
Yeah. So every year we had annual tests that we had to go through. So the state would send us a test. We would have to fill it out, and then as far as the getting into college, I had to do my ACTs to do that.
So your mom and dad must have done a pretty good job, because I see you as a pretty smart guy. I mean, you're not just some kid. You're pretty intelligent. So maybe that's genetics, or is it your mom?
Maybe. I would say that there are some academics that I lack, but my parents really wanted to develop a lot of those soft skills, the lifelong skills that people develop. And so I think by choosing to homeschool us, they were able to control our environments, control that, and really invest and hone in on developing those skills.
Okay.
So something that I think homeschoolers may struggle with is being new in situations, not being struggling with being shy in different things, where people have said that I don't necessarily struggle with that. So being out and having a lot of siblings and being active in sports was one way that my parents helped hone in on developing that skill.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that sounded like it worked out well for you.
It did, yeah.
Yeah,
You should see my other siblings.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Just
But
kidding.
speaking of that, you've got 7 others, so 8 total.
Yeah.
And it seems like your other siblings are doing pretty well themselves too. I mean, law school and attorneys, and
Yeah.
so it's worked out.
For sure, yep. I think everybody has their developed skills. So I do have 2 older brothers who practice law. I have a sister who is a PA, a physician's assistant. I have one who's a hairstylist. I have some that run their own, doing Norwex or different home things.
So everybody has their own niche.
Yep. Yeah.
So your dad was a state legislature here in Minnesota. He was a legislator. Still
Yeah,
is?
still is. Yeah.
Okay, and that's in the
Mhm.
Lakeville area?
It's mainly Burnsville. I believe it covers. They redraw the lines all the time. I know it covered Savage at one point. I think Bloomington got drawn out of it, and so now it covers more of Lakeville
Okay.
things.
Now, is he a Republican or a Democrat?
He is a strong Republican.
Okay, so
Yes.
your dinner table must have had some very good conversations.
Yeah.
Just tell me about that, how having a strong Republican father, and you lean more on the progressive side.
Yeah.
How did you guys have conversations, or did you just keep it quiet?
No, we definitely talked about it. Politics were a huge thing in our family. We talk about it at the holidays. I think it's fine to have different opinions, and we both do a really good job at trying to listen to the other person and understand where they're coming from. Because although my dad and I might disagree on topics, we both have the same values. We both want a safer community, or we both want our education system to be better. We see the same problem, we just have different ways of how we think we should fix it.
Now, have you guys agreed on anything that would be substantiated by common values that you have? With, let's say, making the streets safer. Is there something you both agree on and can grow from there, or is it you're just polar opposites in how to accomplish the same task?
Yeah, I'm struggling to find an area where we are similar on, making the streets safer or investing more money into the streets and our bridges and different things is good, but at the end of the day, I see a different way to solve that problem than he does. And so I wish him the best in his endeavors, but we have a different viewpoint. So sometimes our conversations are very life-giving and growing, and we can challenge each other, and then some days we're just like, well, you see it different than I do, okay.
Right.
And so I think it's an ongoing discussion. It's never over, and we will always pick up the conversation.
So how about with your mom? Is she a liberal or the other side of your father?
Yeah.
Because you got it from somewhere. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, I would actually say one of my older brothers was very significant in my life in understanding other perspectives and challenging the system, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, and challenging. But my mom is very Republican as well.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, I would say that if I were to put them on a scale, I would put my dad much further than my mom.
To the right.
Yeah, I see in some more instances my mom and I can have common ground where my dad and I might not. But that doesn't mean that I don't have common ground with my dad. I just can't think of it right now.
That's just the way it goes sometimes. I
Sure.
mean, especially when you have completely different views on the world and how to cure it. Because it is it's in a need for a cure right now.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that might be popular opinion, that doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on, it needs a cure. We
Right.
see that there are bad things happening in the world, and how do we fix those things?
Right.
Is what's-
So before we get into more political discussions, which I really want to go after, I really want you to try to explain the steps that you took and the thought process that you had as you went into being a vegan. Because to me, that is something that I initially, when I first met you, was just, I scoffed it off. Yeah, whatever, you know what I mean? That'll last like a year. Because a lot of people say they're, vegetarians or vegans, I know they're different, and then they slowly go back to the mainstream.
Mhm.
But you haven't. You steadfastly continued to be a vegan. And so what were the steps towards that?
That's a good question.
There's more than one step up that stairs, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think, so initially why I did it, I was in a course at Normandale College in Bloomington, Minnesota. It was a nutrition course, and I was forced to watch a video called Forks Over Knives, which discussed a lot of the health benefits, where nutrition comes from, looking at some of the epidemics of obesity and heart disease
Mhm.
and cancer, and are there any similarities in these? And after watching that video, I felt like I should at least try to go a month vegan. And with my girlfriend at the time, now my ex, she had always wanted to go vegan, and so I had said, okay, hey, this is something that I know you want to do. Can I try to do it for a month? And let's just kind of see how it works. Did it. It was the worst month of my life. I remember eating a bell pepper for dinner, just a straight bell pepper, because I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to prepare anything. And so it was tough. After the month, I went back to being a vegetarian because I thought that with our treatment of animals that it wasn't okay how we were treating them, especially that we didn't need to treat them that way. And so after the 2 weeks of being vegetarian, I realized I need to figure out how to cook and eat so that I can have meals and I don't just eat a bell pepper for dinner, that I can have something delicious, and almost something to brag about too.
But you've gone from that standpoint to today where you can actually cook things and they taste pretty good.
Yeah, I currently just made a green curry, put it over rice with chickpeas, habanero peppers, broccoli. It was delicious. Made it last night, and one of the critiques for people that say like I could never eat vegan or something like that is I'll challenge you, and I bet you my meals taste better than yours.
You know, Olga and I went to a Hindu temple, and they had a cafeteria, I'll call it, and it was all vegan. There was no,
Wow.
because you can't serve meat inside the temple,
Okay.
and it was phenomenal. I mean, I told Olga I could eat this every day. It was
Yeah.
that good. So, now let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
For me, as I get older and I start to look at it, it's not so much the treatment of the animals. I'm really looking at this eating meat in a whole different way. It's more of a survival for the planet. The resources that we put into, feeding, to keeping the animals alive, from the fuel to the foods to the packaging,
Mm-hmm.
everything doesn't make sense anymore because of that. It's not so much the treatment of the animals, it's more of a economic sense for me of how long can you continue to go down this path and
Yeah.
not create a much different and worse world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's how I'm looking at
Yeah, that's a great perspective. I think that there may be pushback. People might say, well, you can do that while still eating meat. You can, with the way that you take care of land, and you can move your cattle around in different stages. But to your point, I would say the best way is let's just cut it out. Like,
it. Well, you can do that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? You can get grass-fed beef and you can do a lot of those things, but you can't mass produce that for the whole entire world. So personally, let's say I can afford to do that,
Sure.
and I can afford to have somebody do that for me. Yeah, I can see how I can change myself.
Hmm.
But when you talk about millions and billions of people, I don't think you can mass produce that. You can't. There's just not enough land and not enough resources.
Land is definitely a shortage, for sure. And with how much different animals need for that,
Right.
yeah, you're
And
absolutely
then you look
right.
at today's world where, chickens live in a 12 by 12 little cage.
Mhm.
I mean, is that something that you think about a lot, or is that, just a non-issue because you don't need a lot of land to store a bunch of chickens?
That's true. I might argue you could feed a lot more people with that amount of a garden. So if you were to take out the chicken, whatever coop or whatever, you could make a garden out of it, and I bet you could feed a lot more people.
And it would be cheaper, and it would be more sustainable.
Mhm.
And see,
Yeah.
that's the part that I look at right now, as I
Mhm.
start to look at my meat consumption and what I'm going to do with it, because it is an important thing, I think, for all of us to look at. It's not just the way it used to be back in the old days. There's twice as many people on the earth as there was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not going to slow down, unless there's an epidemic or anything like that.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about being a vegan now? I know that some people harass you about it, and you take some guff, but you still hold your head high.
Yeah, I love being a vegan. It will always be something I brag about. and people might laugh at me, and that's fine. I hope that they are just laughing at the situation. I'll always assume good intentions until I shouldn't, or until
Right.
they prove me wrong. But yeah, you can get written off for so many different things. You can get written off because you're red haired, because you're a homeschooler. There's just another thing. Sure, I'm vegan. Yep. I tend to try to not tell people. I do know that there's a stereotype that goes with vegans about them bragging about it and sharing it, and I heard a joke one time. If a vegan does CrossFit, which one do they tell you first?
I'm the one who showed
Was
you
that you?
joke.
It was so good. But like similar, there's just
Yeah.
this whatever stereotype with vegans, and it's true. Like, well, I shouldn't say it's true for everyone, but it's in many of my situations where I've come across other vegans. It's one of the first things that I know about them, and it's like, why can't I get to know you as an individual, and then I find out, oh, you're also vegan? That's cool. I had no idea.
Well, it's an important identity to them. It's an identity that they have, you know, just like with CrossFit or some of these other things that people have. That's an identity.
Yeah,
And I think veganism is one of them.
for sure.
So let's talk about progressiveness,
Mm.
the politics of progressivism.
Yeah.
You know me, I've told you many times I'm a libertarian, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't.
Mhm.
I'm not a conservative like your father, because I tend to try to look at both sides and come up with the best.
Yeah.
Where I think the right looks at their view and nothing else, and the left looks at their view and nothing else. But the people in the middle, which I will call myself, we're getting smaller and smaller by the day, because people are drawing lines in the sand, and they're not going to come in the middle anymore. And so, what do you think about being progressive and how that worldview that you have? Explain some of that to me, and then how you think that's going to move forward as we move into the midterms, and then also the next presidential election.
Mhm. I think that it is really important to engage with people who think differently than you, who look differently than you, who have different experiences than you. And when you delete friends on Facebook, when you draw lines in the sand, when you say, I am no longer going to talk to that person, you're cutting off that line of communication when really you could be that person's only outlook for that perspective. And as much as you might disagree with them, okay, try to have healthy conversations where you're not assuming the worst intentions, where you are really looking to make strides with your opinion and your beliefs, and not saying that I'm always right, that I have the best outlook of life. If we can kind of humble ourselves and say, I might be seeing this skewed just like you are, is there any way we can kind of work to figure out some common ground? And with politics these days, that doesn't seem to be what most people are doing. They seem to be
Right.
dividing people, and that sucks, because when you don't know somebody, it's a lot easier to judge them. It's a lot easier to assume the worst intentions of them.
I agree with that 100%. Now, the one thing that I believe also that to add to that is that as we get further and further through the calendar, people are less and less likely to even have friends on Facebook that are different than them, to talk to anybody that are different than them, to listen to the TV shows or the newscasts that have a different view than they believe in.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous at this point. And so, how, in your opinion, can we cure that? I mean, what do we need to do to get away from that?
One of the ways, and I wouldn't necessarily encourage this, but one of the ways I found that I was seeing from the other person's perspective is my grandma is a pretty, believes she's a very strong Republican. When I've talked with her, her belief systems don't necessarily align, but she watches a lot of Fox News. So when I've been around, I've sat down and talked with her about it and kind of watched the news, and I would be very upset if that was my only outlook, or if that was my only way I was getting information. I would be furious with things that are going on. Same if I were on the opposite side, just watching CNN or something like that. Like, they don't do a very good job at seeing from the other person's perspective. And so trying to find more of those not biased sides. And it's hard these days. I feel like NPR has done a very good job at trying to remain in the middle. Sure, you might think that they are progressive if you're on the right side, and people like myself might say they're not progressive enough, that they might lean more Republican. And I think it all comes to how your perception is of the situation. If you're a strong Republican, you think everything is too far left. And if you're a strong Democrat, you think everything is too far right. And to say, okay, maybe I am the extremist. Maybe I am the farthest on the spectrum here. Where's the middle ground? Where should I be looking? Don't just look for things that...
Have you ever listened to BBC America?
I haven't.
You should listen to that. I think that is about as middle of the ground as you can get. And I listen to them quite often. I don't watch them on TV anymore because I don't watch TV, but on the internet and stuff. And they're really right down the middle, and I tend to get more truths out of them than I do out of the Fox News and the MSNBCs, because they all have agendas, where I think that the BBC tends to just report and then lets me make up my mind. And then I
Sure.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Now, other people could say, oh, the BBC is this or that, but just from my vantage point, it seems to be right down the middle, and I like it a lot. So check
Yeah.
that one out.
It is nice watching other countries' views of our politics, because for the most part they might not care. Sure, you could argue they care a little bit, but they're just reporting it. They don't necessarily have an agenda that, oh, they're trying to swing their voters one way. No, they're people who are watching this probably aren't voting in the election.
Correct.
And so they're just reporting what's going on. So it's an interesting perspective to take into consideration.
You know, I have this Facebook guy that I've known for about 10 years. Known is a very loose statement, but his name's Michael Yon. Y-O-N. He's a former Green Beret, and he's a journalist. And he would go in bed in Iraq War and stuff like that. But he posts all of this stuff about American news, about the relationship with China and all this stuff, because he lives in Thailand. And the stuff he posts, and it's from all over the world, and it could be from a think tank, it could be from, anywhere. It tends to be the most realistic and forward-looking than anything I hear on the American mainstream channels. So, I mean, look him up, too, because he's got some good stuff. You may not agree with it, but it's good to see all sides.
For sure. It's definitely another perspective, and I think everybody needs to have a voice at the table, even if you don't agree with them.
Now explain to me what you think, or what the populace thinks progressivism is. Because I oftentimes get mixed messages from people who think they're progressives, and sometimes they're not as progressive as somebody that just I talked to 2 days ago. They're more centrists, but they think they're progressives. But the progressives who really act and are doing the day-to-day walk, I think they're a different breed, or you're a different breed, because they actually are living and breathing it every day. It's not just a word. So tell me what that involves, because I get mixed messages.
Yeah, I caution to label myself as a progressive. I don't know what the specific definition is of it. But I think taking a more holistic approach to things, and what I mean is stepping back and looking at a bigger picture. How am I impacting the community around me, or the people around me, or the train ride I took over here around me? How do I play in that? Is it with the food that I eat, the water that I drink, whatever? Do I leave water on when I brush my teeth? Okay, maybe I shouldn't, because that is clean water. Thinking about how your role and your actions play out on a big scale. If everyone were to adapt what you do, would the world continue? Would it be one that you want to live in? In philosophy, it's known as the tragedy of the commons. I think that there's an example I always like, where a kid is walking home from school and he sees a rose garden. It's a beautiful rose garden. and he wants to impress his girlfriend, and so he snips off a little one to bring to his girlfriend, and he gives it to her. The point of that story and what's interesting about it is if everyone were to adopt his method and snip off one, there wouldn't be a beautiful rose garden. And so taking that approach of if everyone continues to consume fish in our oceans, what is that going to do to our oceans? What will that do to the acidity? If everyone continues to consume fuel at the rate that we are consuming fuel, what is that going to do to our air? What is that going to do in a big picture, long term? How are we going to work in that type of space? And taking a step back and saying like, okay, how am I interacting with the world around me? If everyone adopted this method, is that okay? That's why I do drive a car, but I love public transit. And I wish public transit isn't the best. It has many downfalls. But
In the U.S., if you go to Europe
Sure.
or some of these other places, it's phenomenal.
Yep, yeah. But how did they get there? They had to invest into it. They had to push people towards that. And cars, go ahead.
Well, I was going to tell you, they had the ability to invest in it because they had their national defense taken care of by the United States. And we'll get into that in a little bit. So you have the ability to invest when you don't have to worry about protecting your country.
Sure, that could be. I think that it is definitely important for us to think bigger scale. Even with public transit, I would argue with the development of self-driving cars, if cars are going to be driving around and picking people up, if Ubers aren't going to need a driver because they can just drive themselves, then what should the city be working on? Should they be investing billions of dollars into a train system that might be extinct in 20, 30 years or something like that?
Yeah.
It's
So-
great now, but
So take your progressiveness
yeah.
and put it into politics for me. So I want to hear how that way of life, and then moving it towards politics, and how look at political candidates, look at political parties, look at anything that you see, and inform me what that means.
Yeah. So when I go to vote, one of the things that I look at is obviously the policies that the person upholds. Are they close to me? How similar are they to me? And then one, I like to see the consistency that they've had with that. Have they been doing this for the past 30 years? Have they had this position? Or did they recently flip in the last year, couple of years, because they want to get reelected?
Are you talking about Hillary Clinton?
I think there are a lot of things that she has grown to, and that doesn't mean that people can't change their minds on
Agreed,
things.
but I just wanted to throw that in there as a quick quip.
Yeah, I loved Bernie Sanders. I was a huge advocate for him. He had an amazing track record, in my opinion. His biggest critique, I felt, from the other end was he wanted to push socialism, which I thought if you looked at his policies, they weren't that bad. If you were just saying, oh, all socialism is bad, I mean, okay, socialism, our police department, you don't pay for them on a per use, you pay taxes, and it doesn't matter how many times you use them, everybody pays the same. Same with the fire department. I like to use the example of streets, driving on them. A more socialistic point of view is that everybody pays the same amount regardless of the streets that you use, okay? Or you could be paid for how much you use it, like a toll road. And I would ask people, would you prefer every road to be a toll road, or do you like the system that we have? Because most of the time, people who are against socialism don't always align with wanting more tolls. They don't like that. They wouldn't say, oh, I think it's a good idea for us to pay for how much we use our police system. There are things that socialism has that are really good ideas. Our police system, our fire system, all of that. Our public
It's also got
libraries.
some very bad ideas, which we will talk about
Sure.
once we get into. We're going to have a discussion about our beliefs once we settle what your beliefs are. So,
Sure.
So Bernie, you really liked him.
Loved them. Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll get into this in a second, like I said. But Bernie, to me, I watched him give a speech, and a progressive woman came up and pushed him off the stage, and I lost all respect for him.
Why is that?
You should never let anybody push you off the stage. It's your stage. You are the candidate that's giving the speech. She pushed him away, and she started talking. Hell no. You know, that just doesn't work in my world, where somebody can just push you off the stage. And that told me about something about his character, that he has a weakness. And I didn't like that weakness.
What would you have preferred he do? Push her back, push her off the stage, grab her, like get security to pull her out?
He looked at her and didn't say a thing. Now, maybe he didn't want to, but he should have just said, hell no, get your ass back down. Seriously. I mean, that's what I think he should have done. That's what I would have done. No, I wouldn't have, beat her up or anything like that, but I
Sure.
would have made sure she didn't, take my stage or my podium.
Yeah.
There's just no way,
Mhm.
But when he let that happen, what's he going to do with Vlad Putin? That's the kind of mentality I have, is if you let one person push you, well, everybody will push you.
Yeah.
So, so you really like Bernie
Mm-hmm.
and the Democratic Party, which he's not even really part of, let him down by kind of making Hillary the candidate.
It's unfortunate how this situation turned
So,
out, in my opinion.
yeah, it is unfortunate because the party politics overruled what the party wanted, the people.
Yeah.
And it's happened in the Republican Party too, so let's not play fools here, right?
Yeah.
It happens. And so
Mhm.
the party base, they pretty much assume who's going to win before the people have voted, I think.
There's polls
They
and
make
different
it
things.
happen. They make it happen somewhere. Just like with George Bush with McCain. McCain was beaten him. But the party wanted George Bush and the George H. Bush, or whichever one,
Yeah.
the newer, the younger one.
W.
W.
I think the party wants to put forth somebody, and again, I'm presuming intentions, but I think that they want to push forth on somebody that would best represent their views and their opinions. And so even though they might not have the popular vote, they want to put up the best contender that they think has the chance to win. Many people might not agree with that, but they want to win, right? I don't think...
They do want to win. And
I don't
sometimes
think-
they don't know what the people want, though. And I think the people have a much more important voice than, 600 delegates.
Interesting. Yet you wanted Bernie Sanders to not let the people speak up on the stage when the lady did jump up.
It was his stage.
You're right. And the public wanted to stand up. And
The public can stand up in a different forum when he
Sure.
is actually, his candidacy probably paid for that venue.
Probably.
They probably, paid for the security, they paid for a lot of things.
Set up
So,
there, yeah.
to me, that's ownership.
Yeah.
And so you don't just give that ownership up
Okay.
easily. So, you almost tried to get rid of it, but it didn't work. So, as the progressives, they seem to be younger, college educated, and they seem to come from a different America than I came from. I'm much older than you. I look at
Much,
back at
much older.
Much, yeah. I'm probably as old as your dad.
Not
No.
No.
So when I look at the America I grew up in, and then I transpose that on the America that my children grew up in,
Yeah.
there's so many less freedoms. There's so many less. There's so much less ability to do the things that make people happy. There's more regulations. There's more paranoia. There's more, people with
Can you
an
give me
agenda.
an example? What are you thinking of right now?
Well, I'll give you a simple example. I mean, it's not a very good one, but it's the first one that comes to my
Sure.
head. Is that when we were in high school, we'd be out having a couple beers, cop would pull us over, he'd go, okay, I know you guys, follow me, and he would drive us to one of the kids' house and says, I'm gonna come back, and when that car's gone, I'm gonna ticket all of you for DUIs, drinking underage, but if you stay there, you're good. So we would stay there, he'd take the beer, he probably took it home with him, who knows. But it was more of like, okay, we understand, get home, take care of it. And where today they're, any slightest infraction, they cut you. There's no room for a mistake today. And I can understand why that happens today because of, mad, and there's also with cops getting killed and things like that where they don't know the people. But back then it used to be more of people taking care of each other, where today I don't see that. And not just with police, but neighborhoods and parents, and everybody took care of each other, made sure that little Johnny was, doing the right thing. It doesn't happen anymore. You're pretty much on your own island, and you don't have much of a support system out there to make sure that, because let's say as a parent, you can't be everywhere. My parents weren't everywhere; they were both working, and they had a kid like me, which was a heavy dose of realism for them, I think. But it was there's just some of those things, and the political system today. I will take it back to when Newt Gingrich and the whole Republican revolution with Bill Clinton in office, and they tried to impeach him, and actually did impeach him, and that's when the bad politics began. From there on, and Newt Gingrich to me is a piece of shit because of the way he changed politics in America with this fighting and win at all cost. And I don't really believe that is the way politics should be run.
How should it
One
be
other
run?
thing. You know what? I'll go give you another example, and this is
Yeah.
a true story. You know who Barry Goldwater was, right?
Name sounds
He
familiar.
ran for president against Lyndon Johnson, and he lost. He was very
Okay.
conservative.
Yep.
And you know who Hubert Humphrey was?
Yep.
Very liberal for his day. He'd be moderate today, but very liberal.
Yeah. Wasn't he in Minnesota?
He was, and he ran for president and lost to Richard M. Nixon. But they used to, as senators, be able to sit down and drink some whiskey and come up with the best solution for America. And they did this often. There's tales about how they used to do that.
Yeah.
And then today, in the Republican and the Democrat can't sit down and do that because they're always doing what's best for the party. And part of it, they believe what's best for their party is best for the country. But I don't believe so. I believe that there needs to be a mix of both ideas. Both sides need to come together.
Mm-hmm.
And the Newt Gingrich of the world started that positioning and pushing everybody into each side of the chamber. And there's nobody in the middle anymore. So that's what I have. Now I know that there's progressives out there who say we can't go to the middle either because the Republicans are crazy. They are, right-wing conspiracy type of thing, as Hillary used to say. And that's partially true. But it's also the left is also has a conspiracy. So, there's a balance in it, and nobody seems to be able to find that.
Yeah, I think it's tough because I imagine if you were a senator and you tried to reach across the aisle, which is something that I think certain senators do better, their party might not like that they're cooperating with the other side, and it might look like they're not loyal, or their voters might think that, in which case they're out of their job. And
I agree.
in some of these situations, these politicians have made it a goal to try to get reelected every time, that this is their career, this is what they're focused on. There isn't job security in that.
I don't know if a senator should have that as a career focus. It should be, something that they do out of civic responsibility, but it shouldn't be a career. And even look at the Republicans right now. They're looking at anybody who crosses Donald Trump. He puts up some stick figure to go against him in the primaries, and they may lose, and several of them have. And so people are afraid to go across the aisle. And I think that I have great respect for somebody like Jeff Flake and some of these other guys, Court. They basically threw him the middle finger and said, what you are is wrong for the country. And so, even though they're all retiring because they couldn't get re-election, they will lose their jobs, at least under this administration.
Yeah,
And
so
that's wrong. That's wrong.
I think something to just kind of like, and this is an idea, it's not a solution for anything, but I think when big money started getting into politics, we saw a lot more radio stations all the time being bought up, that the competitor if they weren't the first ones there, they weren't able to get in at all. And I think if we look at how much money is spent on politics, that if we could some way say, okay, only these parties get this amount of money and these parties get this amount of money, and it's even. Spend it how you want, but this is how you get. This is your allotted money to spend on that. Whatever that looks like, to try to make it more of an even playing field.
Well, you know, the Republicans have the Koch brothers, or at least they did until recently. And then Soros is another big donor on the Democratic side. So I think they both have their funding sources.
Mhm.
But what happens is we look at down in Texas with you know, the Cruz and what the heck's that guy's name? The senator. Anyways, Cruz is getting outspent by like 30 million because the Democrats want him out.
Yeah.
And you know, he's not a bad guy to get out. But thing is that when you want to get rid of somebody, all you have to do is outspend them.
And
Because
I don't think that's okay.
the people are sheep. They believe what they hear.
So how do we change that?
You know, I don't know if it's money. You know, I see the point of money, but you can't. I don't believe in having a level playing field in a position. You hire on merit, right? Merit should be the number one thing. So you have to look at the person, just like you were saying earlier. You know, everybody has to take the time instead of voting party line or voting, you know, what they've heard on the streets or what they've read on Facebook. They actually have to spend the time and look at what the person has done, you know, in the past. Or if they have a voting record, actually look at what they voted for and against.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that much time.
So,
But people don't do that.
what do you think we can do to? You had said that the people are sheep, in the sense that it sounds like if you just tell them what to do, they do it. How do we better allow the people to be more critical thinkers, to challenge it, to not just go along with what they're told, but to ask themselves, is this information accurate, what they're sharing?
I think it goes back to critical thinking, don't you?
Sure.
I mean,
How do
there's
we
a
teach
lack of
that?
it. But when you look at, you know, Leave No Child Behind, people were taught how to pass tests. They weren't taught the knowledge of knowledge. You know what I mean by that? They were just taught facts and figures and, you know, how to do things. But the reality is when I went to school, it was, we took courses like British literature in high school and things like that, which taught you how to think. You know, from even simple things as Shakespeare.
Yeah.
That's critical thinking of what's going on here and what's going on here, and you build through the story. You don't have too much of that today. You know, people are looking at things that as everything is real, but I don't think much of it is anymore. I am such a cynic today with this. I think it's incredible how, you know, you can just even look at this Kavanaugh thing. You know, I actually went back and looked at his voting record, and his voting record isn't that far off of what people said it was. But to come back 40 years or 30 years later and throw a charge out, you've got people that are pissed that they believe it's so true, that they're so angry about this Kavanaugh guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But you don't even know it's true because this woman could have made things up. Or her recollection could be off. I mean, who knows what happens at a high school party 35 years ago? I mean, you're not at my age, but Kavanaugh's the same age I am.
Mhm.
And I couldn't tell you what happened at a high school party 35 years ago. You know, I can tell you what, I can tell you one thing, that I didn't rape or, you know, take advantage of a girl, but that's, somebody could come up to me and say, hey, Mike did that, you
Mhm.
know, and I would have no defense. Well, no, I didn't. I've never done that. What's the defense? It's her word against his. And so for me, that just turned me completely off of this whole Washington, D.C. scene. You know, it's all about politics and trying to get, you know, because they realize, the left, how important this seat is. And it's, you know, that important to their agenda. And it's also that important to the Republicans, I believe. So
Do you?
it's a fight that no one's going to win.
Yeah. Do you carry that same disinterest when if it was an individual coming forward about a priest who had molested them 30 years ago? would you say I'm fed up with it? Nope, don't forget about the priest. Like, whatever, he probably didn't.
Well,
do
you
it.
got me on a or a soft spot with that one because I've actually, you know, was brought up Catholic and had a little experience in that. Not that I was ever abused or anything, but um, I think that if there was collaborated by more, you know, and I know I'm getting set up right here, but if it was
Not trying to
collaborated
say,
more,
we're just having
and
a
it was-
discussion.
we are, but I see where you're going with this, and I don't like it. I think that's an orange and an apple comparison.
How so?
Um, because the priest has authority over that person or that child. These were two people that were the same age that are in completely different opposing political views that could, you know, help one or hurt the other. Now the priest, you know, that's a great example of how you could listen to somebody 35 years ago and say, okay, yeah. But I'm not so certain that they're comparable. And tell me if they are. Tell me how they are.
At the very least, we are seeing, in my view, somebody having power on one end and using it to exploit another. And at the very least, I think there should be an investigation.
Where were these accusations when he became a federal judge?
I don't know.
And yeah, that's, but like going back to the priest, when the priest is always a priest,
Yeah.
you know. But when he became a nomination for the Supreme Court justice, all of a sudden that came out of the 11th hour.
Yeah.
So
I-
where were these accusations when he was working for the Bush White House? Where, you know, so those are roles of power, and they never came up.
For sure. So, I guess I should be more clear. I was referring to the power structure in the dynamic when that situation happened, when the priest was with the individual. Or
And I'm trying to
at-
take it back to Kavanaugh.
Okay, yeah. So in that situation, and I'm not up to date on all the details, but I would say that there most likely was a power displace or a mishap in a way that the individual felt violated, that was not their choice. And so I think at the very least we can look at this situation and we can say, I don't know why it's coming up now. I have no idea. I don't know if they were working through personal reasons or if it has to do with them getting to the Supreme Office or whatever. But just because it comes up at the same time something else, sure, it spikes in interest, but that doesn't mean that that's the cause of why it's coming up. It could just be that the person overcame whatever emotions that they were going through and that they are now in a right state to address it, and oh look, okay, yeah, he's going up for election or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if that. I think that's a pretty naive way to look at it. I mean, it's
Correlation doesn't prove causation.
That's true, but serendipity. You know what that means?
Go ahead and share with me.
No, I just think that nothing is by chance. You know what I mean? There's always a reason for something. And we may not understand the reason, but there is a reason. And if we don't really look at the picture of why it came out then, I'm not going to take somebody's word for it. It was at the right time in my life. I don't buy that. There has to be something else. You know what I mean? All right, so we've beat that one to death. All right, let's talk about guns in
Ooh.
America.
Guns.
You know, that's one area where I think 3 years ago you and I would have been on polar opposite ends of the earth.
Yeah.
You know, I had owned military grade guns. I had owned pistols, hunting weapons. You name it. You know, I probably had it.
Yeah.
And you have never owned a gun. No. Have you ever shot a gun?
Yes.
And when were you? Where were you? How old were you when that happened?
Ooh, I want to say like 17. I shot a P-22. That's a little rifle,
Yeah.
right? Something. And then
22 caliber.
22
It's just a little.
little tiny thing.
Yeah.
And then I shot clay pigeons around. It was the same time I was at a friend's cabin with a 12 gauge shotgun.
Now, how did you think about that? I mean, was it fun?
Sure. Yeah.
So what made you not want to shoot them or own them or possess them?
Um, I think that guns are designed to kill people, to kill things, okay? Whether that be a deer, whether that be a person intruding your house, they are designed to do that. They aren't designed to trap them, they aren't designed to do anything but kill them. And my philosophy or my outlook on it is I've seen from my experience of researching and looking at different things that communities with lots of guns are not as safe as communities with no guns, or very little guns. I see a lot of the more guns that a community has, I see there are escalations in violence and crime, whereas communities that don't have that don't have those violations as much or to that level. And so really it comes back to safety thing. I want our communities to be safe, and I would feel much safer if we could eliminate most of the guns than if we gave every individual a gun, because I don't think if we look at like big events or something like that, if you were to go to a party and you knew that, like let's say a high school party, you knew that everyone in that room had a handgun on them, would you feel safer or not as safe? And I think
I would
everybody.
leave. I would leave.
And why is that?
Because alcohol and guns do not mix.
Sure.
There's
Okay.
no ifs, ands, or
Even
buts.
if there's no alcohol though involved, my experience with people is there's a lot of people that handle situations very differently.
Oh,
than
so
I
you
do.
went to a high school party where there was no alcohol?
Let's be real. I was
That-
homeschooled.
That was a different America than I had.
Yeah.
I suppose your high school parties with your mom and dad.
Yeah. Movie night.
Yeah. Popcorn?
Yeah. Where my mom would spray water on it because she wanted to give the illusion that there was butter on the popcorn.
Nice.
But didn't want that unhealthiness with her kids. So,
Well,
yeah.
as you may or may not know, I lived like 14 months on and off in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And over there are really no guns on the street. Most of the police aren't even
They have high
carrying.
restrictions for sure.
Oh, very high.
Mhm.
If you own a gun, let's say to use for clay pigeons, you have to take that gun and you have to store it in a government-approved place. Now you have the key, but you can't take it off the premises because it's for clay pigeons or whatnot.
Sure.
You can't take it home. And there's some other legal things, but there are very few guns on the street in Holland. And I look at that society, and they have a lot of freedoms that we don't have over here. They have a lot of, fear. They're not fear that somebody's going to go shoot them.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Oh, there's other crimes that are committed over there, don't get me wrong, but fear of a gun is not one of them.
Yeah.
Fear of being shot or fear of having to protect yourself with a gun, those are not issues over there as far as I could tell.
Mhm.
So when I came back to America, I'd say one of those trips, I just gave my guns to my sons. I said, I don't want them anymore. I don't need them. You know,
Yeah.
much the same as you. The gun, as far as I can say in my 53 years, I've never had a need to use a gun.
And
As self-protection.
hopefully you never have to.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it is that you carry yourself a certain way and you do things the right way. You're not going to be in a position to be in that position.
Yeah.
Now people will say, well, somebody breaks in your house. Well, I've got other things there that would protect me besides a firearm.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? A lot of times firearms are used against you anyways, and you're going to be killed. So I've completely changed my opinion about guns.
Mhm.
You know, what does a civilian need an AR-15 for? Now, granted, an AR-15 shoots a small shell. It's not really a military-grade gun.
Semi-automatic?
Yeah, semi-automatic, but it's not something you'd actually want to go into a combat zone with.
Sure.
You'd get your shit kicked out of you with that thing. But it is a military-type weapon that doesn't really shoot military shells. What does a civilian need that for? You tell me. I had an AK-47.
Yeah.
You know, a 12-year-old kid can pick that up and start, dropping 40 rounds out of it in less than 30 seconds.
I think to that point, there is a big difference. I know a lot of people would say, well, knives can kill people, hammers can kill people. You can do
Yes, but they kill one or two people, not 200
the
people.
time to kill is vastly different. And a
And the
mob,
distance.
sure, and a mob, if people see that happening, 3, 4 guys can stand up and they can hold off another person doing that. 3, 4 guys can't hold up against an AR-15, right? They can't. A guy can just walk into a movie theater with however many people sitting in there and mow it down.
Well, the gun rights people will tell you that if I had a gun and I was shot him, and he would only kill 12 people versus 60 people. And there is some credence to that. But the reality is that if you took the guns off the streets, such as like Australia did, now they're having a little upheaval in their gun crime, but it's a visual thing. Our world is infested with guns right now, infested, and there's really no answer. With looking at it from a Second Amendment thing, I like to go hunting. I like to do some of those things, but those guns are pretty much one shot and boom, you got to reload.
Yeah.
You know.
So there's an interesting thing about guns that I always like to bring up is, so back in the day,
You're too young to say back in the day. You're way too young.
I'm referencing before my time.
Oh, okay,
Before
good.
my time. When the auto industry was not about safety and they boasted about the speed of their cars, how different things were, there were no, there was not rules. There were rules in place where they couldn't do studies on why car crashes happened, what caused it, conduct reports of it. With that being said, allowing that ability to conduct that research and to evaluate those situations, car industries started saying, hey, it's probably not a good idea to have sharp buttons because when a person hits their head, it could kill them rather than just injure them. My point with this is we're not allowed to look at and analyze these situations with gun violence. If we could get research on just to be able to capture the data of what's happening, what's being used, who is it against, all of this,
Oh, come on. You don't think we have that data?
I don't think the government can keep track of all of it. I hope that that we would pass laws saying, yes, when this happens, like when an accident happens, a police is required to do a police report. You need to do that, right? Granted, there might be, you don't have to do it if it's not worth so much damage or something of the car,
Sure.
but that if we could just capture this so that we could view trends. I know that, again, looking at it from an automotive industry, that the roads, even how they're shaped, that they curve or that they bow to get the water when it rains off them. Looking at it like that to say, hey, let's at least do research to benefit this. If we can make it safer, why not?
So how are you proposing you make a firearm safer?
I'm proposing to do research on how firearms are used. And if we can capture that, if we can look at that, if we can see trends that you're more likely to use it on yourself than you are for self-defense or something, that would be huge. Then as a safety to you as an individual, we wouldn't want that. If we saw, like, I'm just making up a number, 99% of people they shot somebody that was innocent, we'd say, okay, start thinking about this. The point is, let's just do research. If we don't find anything, if we see that guns actually aren't the cause of any of these violences, of any of this, okay.
Now, I think the CDC and the University of North Carolina about 2 years ago put out a report like that. And we'll try to get
Yeah.
back to that because if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Because it was amazing what the guns are actually used for.
And making us aware to people that if you are a gun owner, statistics, like, sure.
But I don't know how that's going to stop somebody with an unregistered gun in Chicago from pulling a trigger in a drive-by.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think Netherlands addressed the situation? How do you think Australia? Well, I mean, because they've put forth laws to create higher restrictions on guns, yet you as an individual felt safe there. You
What do they do? They don't allow to have guns on the streets. You know, we don't have gun shops in every fifth block where somebody that goes through this pretend
so you don't
FBI background check and go pull out the weapons. They don't. They go to their local store and there's not, you know, 50 foot of shelf that's aligned with gun ammo.
yeah.
It's not. It's not available to them in the same way it's available here. So that's the difference, the availability. And over here, we have a group called the NRA that is funded immensely, and they have the ability to get you know, votes and lobby and do all that stuff, and it's all under the protection of the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment, you can debate it on either side, but your Second Amendment doesn't allow you to shoot and kill me just because you have a right to bear arms.
Sure, and I think all sides would agree with that, right?
I think I don't know if all of them
To
would.
shoot and okay.
You know, because they could say self-defense. They could say, oh, you know, you can't put it all in black and white because it's a gray area. Well, to me, you know, it's not such a gray area. It's an area where we have guns on the street. And I'm going to use Chicago as a great example. That are unregistered, they're stolen, they're traded, they're bought, you know,
Sure.
and pretty soon just about everybody has them, and they're used for vendettas, for retribution, you know, in areas. They're used for suicide in other areas. And so what you have is a gun epidemic in a city, the third largest city in the United States. I mean, they're killing people. It's like a war zone. So how do you get rid of that? I mean, for me, I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer because I still believe in the Second Amendment, that people have the right to go hunt and own a gun. But for me, the more I think about it, the more I'm starting to come to the conclusion it's the type of gun. And, you know, it's the type of weaponry that you are owning. There's people out there with an arsenal that own more guns and more ammo than many police forces. And it's one guy. Does he have the right to bear those arms? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't have an answer. And it boggles me because normally I have an answer for something, but this one I just don't.
Would you be willing?
It's too complicated in a lot of ways.
Sure, it is complicated. But would you be willing to give up that right if it meant feeling safer in your communities? To know that you don't have to worry about that.
I'm not sure I am willing to give up that right because there's things. Now I won't be able to take that out.
That's all right. Thankfully, that person doesn't have a gun because you don't know
well,
if
you
they
never
do.
know if they do.
Yeah.
But you know, it's gun ownership and your Second Amendment. You know, the ability to and the responsibility and the law tells me I have to pay taxes. There's nowhere in the Constitution that really says I have to pay taxes. Although there is a place in the Constitution that says I have a right to bear arms. So go figure. You know, so what I'm trying to say is that the Constitution is solid and it's something that we use as our compass when we make laws and we do things. But at the same point, there's too many people out there with the wrong amount of power to look at it. And I'm talking about the NRA. They just have too much power over the Republican Party.
Yeah.
There's again, Tom, there's a middle ground. And everybody's on one side or the other. But there is a middle ground where you can allow the Second Amendment to prevail, but you don't have to have people out there with type of firearms that are maiming and killing people.
I think that might be providing some stipulations on it. And if you want to use the word restrictions, then okay. But I think in the way that our founding fathers developed these guidelines for how the country should run, we've changed in many ways from how that state was. And just like any company or any body of people knows, the bigger you get, the more you have to get specific and change things up. And I think it's time to relook at that Second Amendment.
True. Now, one of the things about the Second Amendment, though, is that you will hear people say that it's a safety against our own government. That it's a way to, if we need to have another revolution, and
Sure.
to fight the anarchy or whatever the government would try to force down your throat. Now, saying that, what do you think of that comment?
Good luck. Our our military is so big. We are most spent. It's what is it like 10 times or 10 other countries of the top 10 or whatever don't come close to us or come just about there to us. The amount of money that the United States government spends on our military is outrageous. Good luck with that. If you want to rise up against that, what's your gun going to do against an F-22 coming in and bombing you? Like,
Well, the
or against a tank.
the
like,
reality is if you look at the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union fell, the soldiers just they wouldn't go and attack their own people. They wouldn't go in and drop, armaments on their own people.
Sure.
So I'm not so certain that that would happen. And if it did, it would be crazy. I mean, that
Sure.
because that would be an executive
What are
order.
you saying
They-
then? Rising up against your government.
Well, I mean, people believe that there will be a civil war and another revolution in the United States. And
Okay.
so they are using the Second Amendment to stockpile weapons.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just an okay?
There could be World War III. I mean, probably. And now, like, the future's a long time. Yeah, there could be. Who knows? Maybe it comes in helpful, maybe it doesn't. I think at the risk you're putting your community in, that's a very selfish way to look at it. That you think, okay, cool. If you want to do that, yep, you have every right to do that right now.
Now, I learned a lesson, and I
Yeah.
changed my opinion based on my experience in Amsterdam and Holland. And guns to me just don't work anymore. And it wasn't based on, like cutting the rows. It was based on more of, this isn't who and what I want to be. And so I got rid of it. And I don't really pretend to be a gun advocate or an anti-gun person. But
How
I do know that people are getting killed and maimed that don't deserve it because of the guns, and most of the time it's with people that are unstable. We're
How-
talking mass killings.
How far were you on before you had this shift? How far were you on the other side for a gun advocate? I know you had shared that you had some specific guns that you had. Were you a strong gun advocate? Were you just had a few guns, or how would you?
Well, I would say that I own an AK-47, AR-15, a 300 Win Mag, a couple 12 gauges, pistols, those type of guns, a couple other rifles. But I wasn't out on the streets. I was an NRA member, but I wasn't on the streets saying the Second Amendment, this or that. I just
Sure.
enjoyed shooting and I enjoyed hunting. And at the time I bought the military weapons because I thought maybe, something happened with the government or it started to collapse, and I'd be prepared.
How?
But that changed.
The most powerful gun I've shot, I think, is the 12 gauge, only because it had more kick in my shoulder than the 22. But what would you say to somebody who might be listening to this and is where you were 3 years ago or 4 years ago, what that was? Maybe not advocating down on the streets, but they were a member of the NRA. They do have some of these weapons, guns that I've never even heard of.
I don't know what I would say at this point, but what I would say is that if you ever get rid of your guns, get rid of them to the right people. Because a lot of times people will buy a gun and they'll sell it to their buddy, and the buddy will go use it for whatever. He'll get it stolen, and that's how the trail gets lost, is through ownership being neglectful. I see a lot of people that do not know how to use firearms. They own them, but they don't know how to shoot them properly. And, I know more people that don't know how to adequately shoot guns and aren't trained than I do know people that are trained. And that is a scary thought.
Yeah.
If you look at videos of somebody attacking a police officer at 20 feet, they've got less than a second and a half to respond. What do you think that a non-trained person is going to do? You see people walking around with a little 380 in their front pocket. What good is that going to do? It gives you self-confidence that's false. It's not going to help you. So you really have to look at your own situation and say, hey, what's the reality here? Just because I have a gun doesn't mean I'm any safer. You might be less safe. You know what I mean? You might be able to shoot your foot. You might get your kids killed. You know, there's a lot of things out there that aren't what you're being sold as having a gun and being safe. Now, there are people out there that are fully trained and, you know, can do the job of self-protecting, but most
Yeah.
of them aren't. And that's the part that scares me. So if you're not trained, you don't know what you're doing, don't even pull out of the safe. Get rid of them because it's more of a liability.
So you'd say we need to make it more rigorous for people to obtain guns.
Well,
In the sense
yeah.
of they need training, they need background checks, they need to prove themselves that
Tom, you had to take a test to learn how to drive a car. You had a permit period.
Yeah.
Then you had to take another test,
Yeah.
and you had to prove yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Don't need to do that with a gun.
Why is that?
All you need to do is go through a
But
background check.
why do you need to do that with a driver's license but not a gun?
That's what I'm saying to you is that you should have some kind of
I know.
testing, some kind of
Absolutely.
background test to show that you are able to own a gun responsibly.
Totally.
And it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen with guns because we have it written into our Bill of Rights that you do get that without any of that.
You get the right to own a gun,
Mhm.
all right? But do you get the right to own a gun without having the ability to own a gun? Most people on the right will tell you yes. And I think that's a flaw in the system.
Say that one more time for me.
You don't. The Constitution says you get a right to bear arms. There's more to
Yeah.
it than that. You can also debate
Sure.
that whether you do or not. But you have a right. But that doesn't give you everything to own a gun. I think you have to have the ability to own a gun. You have to have the background. You have to have the mental. You have to be stable.
Mhm.
Because every time we go turn on the news and there's a killer out there that just mowed down 200 people, you know, the person's not stable. The red flags are everywhere,
Mhm.
but yet they're still allowed to own a gun. So if there's a red flag going off and that person owns a firearm and it's registered to them, somebody should come and take it away until somebody says that they're stable. That's the bottom line. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they're a hunter. If they're not stable, they should not own a gun.
But wasn't.
And you're going to say, well, how do you determine stability, right?
Well, wasn't.
There's a lot of ways to determine that.
Sure, sure. But wasn't the guy in Vegas who shot that down? People had said that they never suspected him.
But his brother and some of the other people, according to what I've read, there were some red flags going off. His wife, even, you know, left the country mysteriously. So there were red flags. Look at the kid that shot up Sandy Hook. Red flags everywhere, you know. The kid that shot up Virginia Tech, red flags. The guy that shot up that bar in Florida, red flags. The people that, the terrorists in San Bernardino, neighbors saw them building their guns in the garage, red flags. There's red flags typically on most of these things. But not on everyone, because there's going to be somebody out there that's not. But
Mhm.
you know, there's red flags, but nobody's paying attention to them.
So we need people to pay attention.
We all need to pay attention.
Yeah, I'd
You know?
agree.
You know, I see too many people out there that are stupid about their gun ownership. They don't take the right responsibility. They leave loaded handguns on the kitchen table, and they've got 4 kids under the age of 15. What the hell do you think's going to happen? Kid's going to look at it, kid's going to pick it up.
Or think it's a toy.
And if
Yeah.
you have a shell in the chamber, all you need to do, switch that switch, and boom, it's going off. And hopefully it doesn't hit anybody, but chances are it probably will. So that's my point on the guns. We've beaten this one to death too. We have a pattern of beating these stories to death. Now, one of the things too is that you look at the politics of Bernie.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Bernie because I'm fascinated why people believe in Bernie and like Bernie. Because to me, I probably would be like a liberal with Trump. I don't know if I could. I would like pull my hair out and want to commit suicide type of feelings because
Okay.
his vision of the U.S. isn't what I want at all. It's not even close. We talk about taxation, which you and I have had several discussions about. That would totally piss me off. We've talked about, the socialism. And I've had several discussions with people that have lived in countries with socialism. And it might sound like a good idea, but it's really not because the supply chain is zero. People are unmotivated. People, take advantage of the situation. There's people motivated
Sure.
doing all the work. 20% do the work of 80. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the people that are in socialism don't want it. But we have all the freedoms in the world, but we want it. Some of us want it. Why is that? Because it's socialism, there might be key components that you like healthcare and
Sure.
things of that nature. But socialism as a way of government makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to pull even an extreme here. Trump, in his candidacy, one of the things that he and I aligned with that I thought, great, even if he gets elected, whatever, there's at least one piece that he and I agree on. And that is people in America are paying too much for insurance and getting poor quality health care in return. There are many other countries that are paying much lesser and getting much higher quality health care in return. Has to do with pharmaceuticals and different things. But that was one component where he was an advocate saying, yeah, we pay way too much here in the States and get crummy health care. And I look at other countries and I see them, it's a holistic, or we're all in this together type of thing. Similar how taxes work, how we pay for our roads, all of that. That you're right.
Well, I don't think taxes means that we're all in it together. I think, as you know, if
We all contribute.
no, we don't. We don't all contribute. You look at Trump's son-in-law, $324 million, and he paid zero federal taxes.
Sure.
That's not all of us contributing.
We all should contribute.
Okay, that's good.
How's that? Yeah.
That's good.
We
And
all
some
sh-
of us contribute more than others.
Mhm.
Contribute much more than others.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And others don't contribute and take much more from the
Correct.
system. Absolutely. Um, in the same way that I don't like toll roads and how much I don't want to pay every time I drive on a road. I'd rather just pay a flat fee and know that if I don't drive it all that month, great, or that year, great. If I do drive it every day to work, great. Doesn't matter. It doesn't change how much I pay. It's just the
But you know what the
form.
system is today, right? The system basically is through gas tax. The more gas you use, the more tax you pay. You know what I mean? The problem with toll roads, look at the state of Illinois. About 40 years ago, they put in a toll road to pay for the road. The road's been paid for 10, 20 times, but the toll is still there. So once you put it in, it never leaves. And that's the problem with taxation and why we get taxed everywhere. We have our income tax, we have our FICA, Medicare tax. Now you can add on, we get sales tax, we get taxed by buying things,
Yeah.
through like a license tax or, even when you buy a car. Look at all the taxes you pay. We get taxed everywhere. So at the end of the day, I think if you earn $1, you actually get taxed at 78% right now,
Okay.
which I think is ridiculous.
It's high. What I would want to know is I don't mind paying higher taxes so long as I get more benefits, right? It's the difference of, are you paying high taxes with low benefits? Ideally, you'd want to pay low taxes with high benefits. And the more that we can, like, for example, if they said that if we can increase taxes by 0.00001%, okay? And that means everybody gets free college. To me, that's a very low taxation and a very high reward. I don't mind paying higher taxes so long as I'm getting higher rewards.
I understand that. I'll go back to the Amsterdam again.
Yeah.
It's a very enlightening place for me. The person I rented the apartment from was, I would call him he worked at a news place and was like a mid to mid-high level manager. And you know what his tax rate was? 56%. There was no state tax. It was all one tax and it took care of everything.
Yeah.
Right? 56%. Did he complain? A little bit. But was he satisfied that he got 56% and that was it? He was happy. Because he lived in a society that provided him the benefit of being able to be successful and have medical insurance taken care of and these other things that they have better roads.
That we might have to pay for out of pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 56% to him was great. But then I explained to him that I pay like 78%. And I get nothing for it, Tom. I get shitty roads, shitty doctors, I get shitty schools. So what's the benefit of paying more tax? You want to take 100%? And it'll even be shittier, right? I mean, think about that. I mean, it's not just the tax, it's what you do with the tax.
Sure.
And I know you were kind of saying that before, but it's what you do with it. And so when you have, when you take a government and you have the government employee percentage as your, let's say in the state of Minnesota, the number of employees that are hired or work for the state is increasing. That payroll is huge, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And then they do these projects to
take forever.
that never ending that cost billions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm saying is we are overtaxed and overburdened, and we get nothing for it. So to fix everything you want and get free college, that's going to put us shit over the limit.
So either we're overtaxed, and I guess it's two sides of the same coin, but one way of looking at it is yes, we are overtaxed. Another way of looking at it is that we are not receiving the benefits that we should be receiving. Right? We're paying more into the system than we're getting out.
And I'm telling you that that's what's happening right now.
Yep, and that's a sucky system to be a part of. Absolutely.
So what would you say what would you go after first? To increase the tax or to increase or improve the benefits?
If I were to just simply think on that, you need to improve benefits because you need populations, you need people behind you, and they'll only see that when they reap the benefits. And so you need to increase benefits so that people will get behind your ideas. And then you can show them, hey, this is what we can do with this amount of money. If you give us more money, here's what we can do with it. And you show them, hey, we are responsible. This isn't frivolous spending.
Well,
we'll get college for free. I would hope that everybody has that opportunity. And so it's not that I want to take it away from your friend, it's that I want you to have it too. And that's where that focus of increasing benefits is. I don't think it's necessarily okay that you are burdened with things and other people get it free. I would love a society where it's not that they have to pay too. I don't want to pull them down. I want to bring you up. The whole, and that might be where I differ from a lot of people, but I like to empower people and motivate them and build them up. I think it's outrageous how much student loans cost and the interest rate on them. But if I can get you free college, I want to do that. If I can get other people free college, I want to do that because the more educated people are, I think the better off our society is going to be.
Now, what do you consider college? Do you consider trade schools, 2-year degrees, associate's degrees, 4-year degrees, PhDs, MBAs?
Yeah.
What do you consider to be school?
Yeah.
Or college?
If we think very big here, global level, what would it do for the United States economy if college all the way up until, let's say, the master's level, 2-year master's, so let's include the master's, okay? So all the way up, finish your master's was all free. Knowing that citizens of the United States had that type of education, do you think other countries would want us and our workers for that? I think so. I think it would bring up our demand of, you have a master's from any school in the United States, you have a master's degree, that allows you so many more opportunities than just having a high school degree. Back, maybe in your day, you found many people probably didn't have college degrees. That kind of set them apart. Most people, at least for my dad, most people had high school degrees, and then after that, maybe someone on.
Yeah, I came from both my parents are college educated.
Okay.
And both have degrees.
Sure.
So that's
That's
separated
awesome.
my parents because most of the kids that I grew up with one or none of the parents have a college degree. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's great for you, and I'd love that opportunity for other people as well, because
But Tom, when my dad went to Purdue University, which now is a very expensive school, and probably was
Sure.
back then, he had a summer job at the county highway department, and he used half of that money to pay for his tuition and room and board.
Yeah.
That's what school cost back then,
Mhm.
right? It wasn't that much compared to today.
Yeah.
And I go back to, I believe that it changed when Sally Mae became a government-sponsored entity. Because then you got money, and that was government money, and the schools could start edging up. And they're not doing what they're passionate about. And what I try to tell people is follow your passion, because that's where you'll be happy. Don't follow what you're supposed to do. Don't do what your dad and mom tell you to do. Don't do what Uncle Tommy told you to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do what you want to do and be passionate about it and have fun at your life.
Totally.
Because you only get one shot. So that's maybe where my angst with the college degree is because I feel it's just a train right into a career that they will never get out of, because once they make a certain amount of money, they can't find another job, or they're pigeonholed into their knowledge base,
Mhm.
and they live the rest of their lives bored shitless.
I do think there are a lot of high schoolers that get done with college or get done with high school and they just think, oh, next step is college. Yep, great. I did PSEO for a little while, and then I took a year or two off and I traveled the world.
PSO, is that the Peace Corps?
PSEO, no. Are you being funny? PSEO. And so going to college just because it seems like the right thing to do at the time might not be the best situation. It might be that you should stay at your job and work, and so that you know what the bottom looks like, and that you might say, I've been here for 10 years or 5 years, I don't want to be here. Or you come to that realization and say, I'm so glad I didn't go to college and take out all those loans. I am much better off where I'm at now.
Either way, you've got to find your passion.
Yep.
And whatever that is, you need to follow it.
And don't do what people are pressuring you.
Right.
You make your
Follow
own
that
life.
that light, whether it's whatever it is. I don't even know whatever somebody's passion is. They have to follow it, and they have to go after it, and they have to live their life with passion. Because if they don't, they're going to look back at the end of their life, and they're going to go, damn, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done that. You know, and it's crazy how people don't see that.
In that same token, though, I would say listen to people who have gone through it. Don't do what necessarily they say, but listen to their experiences. Take in all your surroundings. Talk with people that you used to work with. Interview them. Chat with them.
Absolutely.
Consult with your parents. Ask your
Absolutely.
friends. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your decisions.
Absolutely.
But it's smart to listen to other people.
It is.
Because as much as people are stupid, some people are very smart.
Well, that's why you're here today, because I'm able to
'Cause you're very smart.
opine my opinion upon you. The other part that we haven't hit on in this little segment is that the following your passion leads you to other things. It opens doors that you don't even know exist.
For sure.
And it's that part that really turns me on about just doing something. 'Cause you never know about life, and you have to live it that way. And it makes me very sad to see people not living with passion. And there's too many of us out there, too many people out there that don't.
That don't like their job, they don't like the relationship they're in, they don't like where they're living. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, going back to the college thing, I went 2 years, and I took a year off,
Mm-hmm.
and I started doing jobs, and they were the worst jobs. I worked like at Cremette, you know, making noodles, and just the, like, you know, $5
make
an hour
noodles?
jobs. Well, yeah, for 3 days, and I said, fuck that, not doing
I'm
this.
out.
But I worked like at Ragstock for a while, and I did stuff that was, all right, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. And it gave me an early awakening to what people do. There were people at Ragstock that threw clothes into bins, literally in bins,
Yeah.
for 25 years. And to me, I just looked at there were a couple more women, and I just was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
that is just a horrible existence to me. And
For
that's
you.
when
They might like it, but
no, I think they were stuck. They had nowhere
that
else to
sucks.
go, and it was income. And some people just say, you know what, I'm going to put my 8 hours in so I can go live the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And
Definitely do